Hello everybody, we're just at the top of the hour, ready to kick off with our Share Your Office 365 Security with Social Users webinar. My name is Peter Carson and I'm going to be your host for today. So let me advance through, do a quick introduction here. So I'm the president of Extranet User Manager that's providing the webinar here today. I'm also a SharePoint MVP and a partner seller with Microsoft Canada. I've got all my contact information in here. We're going to be posting a copy of the deck up shortly after the webinar as well, so you'll have all the details in there too. Quick history for those of you that aren't familiar with Extranet User Manager. We've been around for pushing 10 years. I guess it's into 2018 now. I'm coming up on the 10-year mark. Originally, it was a custom solution that we built for a number of our clients as part of our consulting practice. And about 5-6 years ago, we started to productize that and say, you know what, let's actually make a proper installable product out of this. About 3-4 years ago, we added in Office 365 support. We're actually going to be showing some more features we've added there today. Launching out the new EUM brand back in 2015, adding in the B2B support, which is also part of Office 365. And then last year, launching out our channel partner program. That's been very successful for us. So that's a quick background on Extranet User Manager. We have clients all around the globe, primarily here in North America. We're based in Mississauga, Ontario, just outside of Toronto, through the US, but as well as Europe, Asia, and Australia too. So I'm going to start with a couple of definitions just to level set everybody in the group here. And obviously Extranet is part of the name of the product, Extranet User Manager, but what is an extranet? And really what it is a website that's accessible to users outside of your corporate network. So not your staff, but your partners, your customers, your vendors, people outside of your organization that you want to share information or collaborate with. It is a secure area, so it's not an anonymous website. It's not like your public website. It does require a login to come into, and that's going to be the primary thing that we're going to be focused talking about today. It can be delivered in a number of different ways. It could be part of your public-facing website. You could have a portion of the website that is secured. You could decide to expose out a portion of your corporate intranet. Again, with Office 365, that's a pretty common scenario that we're going to talk more about here today. Or it could be a completely standalone extranet purpose-built just for that. So there's two main styles of extranets that we typically see in our engagements. They're collaborative and publishing. The collaborative style is more where you're collaborating on documents. You've got maybe legal counsel or partners or customers that you want to work together on documents. You're not just pushing those documents out to those people, but you're allowing them to edit them as well. So both file upload and download, editing different types of file types. And we often see this in project focused. We do this ourselves with our clients when we're doing consulting engagements. There's a lot of documents that go with those consulting projects. We organize those into a SharePoint site and share that out with our customers. So that's a pretty common scenario that we see from a collaborative point of view. From a publishing point of view, this tends to be more of a one-to-many type of role where you've got a secure website. It's still private content. You don't want to make this anonymously available, but you do have a number of users that are coming in to consume that content. And typically, like I said, it's one way. You're pushing that private content out. There might be some feedback coming back up. There might be the ability to upload files. Maybe they want to be able to like and comment on articles that they read on the extranet, but that's sort of the extent of it. So we're going to focus more on the collaborative side here today, primarily because that's the scenario we see in Office 365. You can't publish a public website out in Office 365, so we don't see that as much on the secure publishing side, but there are scenarios there as well. In fact, we're going to do a client case study at the end of the session here today with the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies that is actually doing that publishing model on Office 365. So we've mentioned Office 365. I'm assuming most people are familiar with it, but if not, this is a fairly broad service available from Microsoft that provides a lot of different products under that umbrella. And the one that we're focused on is SharePoint. SharePoint being a portal that you can create applications in for intranets, for extranets, and you can do that in Office 365. Basically, Microsoft hosts that for you. Now, there's a number of external sharing features out of the box from Microsoft without our product that allow you to build an extranet on Office 365. But there's a lot of scenarios where you can really enhance that experience. And again, that's what we're going to focus on here today. So one of the first questions that we ask people when we're talking about putting together an extranet for them is, well, who's going to be coming into it? Is this a members portal, or are you maybe a charitable or a not-for-profit organization that needs to bring members in securely? Or is it a customer portal? You're a for-profit organization, maybe vendors or suppliers that you work with, volunteers from a charitable organization point of view. A board of directors site is pretty common, particularly in the charitable space where it's often more than just the board of directors, it's committee sites as well, and you can get into the hundreds of people needing to come into those sites and needing to be able to manage those effectively. Could be citizens from a government point of view, researchers, tenants, partners, umpteen different scenarios of what that could be. So that's really our first consideration is understanding who's going to be coming into the extranet. Second from that is what style of an extranet is this? Does everybody see the same information? Or let's say you're building a customer portal where each customer sees their own personalized, customized dashboard that has their order history, their upcoming orders, their product documentation for products they've purchased, very personalized to them, versus one that just needs to publish content out commonly to all the members. Say a board of directors portal where everybody who's a part of the board sees that same board package coming through with that. Another thing we often are very curious about is there any sort of member database that we need to interface with? Often we'll see a Microsoft Dynamics CRM or a Salesforce behind the scenes that's tracking the customers or tracking the volunteers or the vendors, whoever those extranet users are. So do we need to be aware of that and make that part of it so that as people come into the extranet, that activity gets recorded in the back-end member database or CRM system as part of that? Invitation only or self-registration is something we're going to dive deeper into as part of our walkthrough here today. And the concept there is, do you know who the people that you want to bring into your extranet are? For example, board of directors, you're pretty clear who your board is and you can invite them in directly. Versus a publishing portal where maybe you don't know who the target audience is and you want people to be able to self-register and self-identify through that process. If you are doing self-registration, well, who approves that? How does that work? Is there a workflow? Is there different people depending on how they register? How sophisticated does that need to be? And is it just coming into the SharePoint extranet, or is there other systems? Because we actually provide single sign-on to a number of different systems through there. All right, so let's talk a bit about the product features themselves. What is Extranet User Manager all about? And then we'll get into some live demo and take you through some scenarios, and in particular, take the wraps off of the social features, which is the primary focus for today's webinar. So the products is broken into two main components. There's the end user and the administration component. So the end user is, like the name says, anything that the end user sees. So if you have self-registration, it would be your registration form, the ability to set your password, which actually gets a lot easier with social. We don't need to set a password. We can actually link it in with your Google or Facebook accounts, which is what we're going to show here today. Managing your profile, even changing your password, reset forgotten password, a lot of that goes away if you've got the social integration in there as well, which is really about simplifying that user experience. And that's kind of an overarching design goal for the product as a whole. Whether you're an end user, an administrator, a business owner, we want to make this as simple and clean as possible to be able to go through that process. On the admin side, this isn't just used for IT administrators, it's actually used by business owners as well. It's where they come in to search, edit, import both users and groups into the system. And there's different security roles that you can have in here. You could have the ability to only add users to groups that you own. You could be able to create new groups, or you could be able to manage the whole system as an IT administrator. So it depends what rights have been assigned to you, what you're able to do when you come into the product. And security trims it down to the appropriate experience from that. Now, branding is very important too. This is something that's been a challenge for us in the Office 365 world, particularly around the login. That if Microsoft owns that login process, there's pretty minimal changes that we can do to a branding and a user experience through that. Where if we can take over that login experience, which is what we're going to be showing you here today, we can fully brand that and fully manage that entire user experience throughout that, which includes things like adaptive design, making sure that, regardless of whether you're coming in from a smartphone, a tablet, or a desktop, you're going to have an optimal experience on any of those devices. So we use a technology called Bootstrap. It was open sourced by a couple folks over at Twitter. It's a very leading framework for making sure that your websites respond and adapt well, regardless of what device you're looking at them on. Self-registration we've touched on previously. This is an area that we've actually done a lot of investment in the latest version 4 product that we're shipping now. The idea here being that it is a fully customizable experience. You can actually even embed it right into your websites. I'll talk about that more when I show you under the hood how this hangs together. It's pretty easy to add or remove fields to it, and we're actually going to do a live demo of customizing a self-registration form. We can go further though. We can integrate it into back-end systems, build custom approval workflows, do lots of things as part of that. I mean, if you're doing fairly simple edits like just adding or removing fields, which is what I'm going to show you today, you can actually do that just by editing the HTML form. So that's quite straightforward to do. All right, so we've got the forgotten password side of things. Now this obviously changes a little bit from a social identity point of view. We still have the ability to reset credentials because the concept may be that an extranet user may not realize that a year ago they came to your site and they registered their account through Google and they've forgotten that they've made that connection. We still want to have that self-service ability to say, give me your email address and I'll let you reset things up. What we've actually done, I haven't updated the screenshots on this particular slide here, is in addition to being able to set a password, you could reassociate it with Google or you could change it to Facebook or however you want to log in from there. The idea is somebody's having trouble logging in, let's make sure that's an easy, simple self-service process for them to go through to resolve and ultimately be able to get into your extranet. Single sign-on, I mentioned previously, Office 365 and SharePoint are the primary targets that we see in the use of our software, but it's not limited to that. We use technology standards called OpenID Connect and WS Federation, which are industry standards for doing single sign-on. So if you have other applications that either you've developed yourself or maybe they're third-party, even SaaS hosted applications for you, we can actually connect to those as well and provide a single sign-on experience. So somebody can come to your Office 365 portal, click a link and get into another SaaS application from there, which is exactly the scenario I'm going to show you later with OCAS and their Office 365 portal providing single sign-on to Desire to Learn, which is their learning platform provided by a completely independent from Microsoft SaaS training provider. Now, depending on how secure your content is, you may actually want to go further than just providing a social login or an email password login. You may say, you know what, once you've passed that first step of the login, I want to be able to do a second factor authentication through that, whether that's a phone call, a text message, and we're actually adding in email validation as a step here as well. Right now, we're leveraging the Azure multi-factor authentication service. That's actually changing because Microsoft discontinuing some of that services. So we're looking at standing up our own service on top of some of the Microsoft infrastructure to provide that, to be able to continue to have that second factor authentication come through before you get them into the extranet portal. And it's not something that necessarily has to happen every time they log in. We've actually got some smarts and intelligence there. We record past activity, so we know all successful and unsuccessful previous attempts. So we can look at that and say, well, if they logged in from this device before, yes. Are they coming in from the same location as before? Yes. Did they fail a password attempt previously? No. Okay, everything's good. Don't bother doing the second factor authentication. But if you fail any of those checks, maybe we should do a second factor because we're not sure if this is actually who we think it is. Delegation is also another big part of the product. The idea that IT doesn't want to and shouldn't manage this on behalf of the business. That the business has external stakeholders that they want to collaborate with, that they want to securely publish content to, and they know best who those people are. So they want to be able to manage those people, invite them in themselves, and really do the full life cycle around that. And the challenge that we're trying to address here is that if you don't do this, the business will just go and do it themselves. They'll sign up for their own private Dropbox account or box or things like that, and suddenly you've got Shadow IT doing this. If you can bring that back in-house but still provide that same ownership and that same experience, that's the ideal balance from a governance point of view. Now the product itself can actually be installed on your own servers. There's not a lot of infrastructure requirements there. It just needs to be running on an IIS server. It could be installed on your SharePoint server, doesn't have to be. Or we could actually host it in Azure for you. So we actually have a multi-tenant hosting environment up in Azure that we manage. We've got a third party providing 7/24 monitoring on that. And basically that's hands off for you. You just use the product. You don't have to worry about keeping it up and running and patched and such as part of that. The product is multilingual, so we support English, French. Clients have translated into a number of other languages from there. And it's fairly straightforward from a licensing point of view as well. We've got a flat, straight licensing model. Doesn't matter how many users you're bringing in. The only differentiation here is between standard and enterprise, and that's whether you're going to a single application like SharePoint, or you're going to multiple applications like the OCAS scenario, where we're also providing single sign-on to Desire to Learn. That takes us into the Enterprise Edition. So it's non-premise on the left. If you're going to install it on your own servers, that's a perpetual license with a 20% annual software assurance. And on the right is the monthly hosted fee that includes not only the licensing, but all the Azure costs, the maintenance, the updates, everything is part of that. Full details are up on our website. We're very transparent and open from our pricing model point of view. All right. So that's the first 15 minutes or so. Let's actually dive into the main feature for today, which is our social integration. So this is a new feature we've been working on for a little while now. It's actually for a new client of ours, March of Dimes Canada. We're not ready to show what we're doing for them just yet. We're hoping to launch that in the next month or two. So look for an upcoming deeper dive webinar on that particular solution. It's pretty interesting. It provides self-registration and social integration, but even some self-assessment tools for some of the people that are looking to reach out to as part of their services. So pretty cool story there. So let's start with the invitation process, because this is the more likely, simpler, invitation only into a collaboration portal in Office 365 type of scenario. We've got a known set of users, we know who they are, and we want to be able to just add those users in. They'll get a welcome email, they click the link, they either set their password or link it to a social account, log in, and now they can access Office 365. So it's pretty simple from that point of view. So let's actually start with a quick tour of the landing admin portal itself first. So let me come over here. I can close that one out. And here I am logged into our admin portal, which I mentioned is used not just by the IT administrators, but by the business owners themselves as well. I'm currently logged in as a configuration editor, so I can do everything in here. If I was, say, just an owner of a single group, all they would see is the ability to add, search, and import users through here. So basically we've got user management here, we've got management of groups, and I can manage which users belong to which groups, either from the user perspective or from the group perspective. And then I've got the configuration of the system itself. So before we get into the details of the users and groups, why don't I spend a little bit of time, I'm going to show you a couple of the neat things that we've done over here. So there's a number of different emails that get generated out through the system depending on the different workflows that we have. So if I come into my mail configuration, it's going to open that up, and I'm just going to take you through a tour of what are all those different email templates, because that gives you a sense of some of the different workflows that we support through here. Okay, so here's our list of emails that go out. We've got welcome, an Azure B2B invitation, forgotten password, pending approver, and pending approval. Now, for the purposes of this section of the demo from an invitation process, it's really just the welcome email that we need to focus on. So this is the email that's going to get sent out to anybody that you invite into your portal. And it's up to you. You've got full control. It's a rich text editor here. You can put in your own branding, your own copy, and your content. We've got a number of different tokens for different items that can be inserted in as part of that as well. So you can see here we've got placeholders for the display name, for the username, the link for setting a password, the direct link into the site from there, and the restart a password change process if you need to from that point of view. So I can manage all this copy through here. I can define in minutes how long the token that gets sent out for this is valid for, and this is what's going to get sent as part of the invitation process. So let's come back to our home now and say I've got two choices here. Either I'm going to add users one at a time, or I'm going to import in a bunch of users. Let me have a quick look. I just want to make sure from a demo point of view, I've got a bunch of users in here. I use my first name as demo purpose through here. So I've got a couple of accounts, a pending approval one. You know what, let's remove this one because it's from a previous demo, so I can edit that user, and I can move their status from pending approval to deactivated. Go ahead and update that. And this whole interface that you're seeing here is all client-side HTML talking to a back-end API. Why that's important is it's very easy to customize that interface, and it's also very easy to integrate your own applications in. So if you actually have your own processes that you want to, maybe you've got a workflow separate from this that is going to create users, you could actually call the same APIs that we've made available through our product to do that process through there. So let's do another search there, make sure I'm cleaned out. Yeah, I've just got my main configuration account. I'm good to go there. So I have two choices. I can add an individual user or I can bulk import a bunch of users. So if I want to, I can download a template. Let's say I've got my 16 board members and I want to bring them all in at the same time. I could pull down that template, fill in the Excel, import it up, and it would basically activate all 16 of those users and send welcome emails out to each of them. So that's a way to do a bulk import. Alternatively, we can do a one-of, which is what I'm going to do here today. So I say add user. I want to add them as an active user. I'll say Peter Carson. I'll use my email. The rest of the fields are optional. And again, I'm going to show you how you customize these forms. It's not just the registration form, but even these forms here that your business owners would use are very easy to customize too. So if there's specific fields that you want to capture, ones here that are not of interest to you, you can simplify this form, clean this form up, pull it together however you want from there. So go ahead and hit add there. That's adding that active user, and it's going to send out the welcome email to that user. Now it's important that I get that email because I need to prove that I am this person that owns this email address to be able to come into the site. Sometimes that takes a minute to come through. Let me pull up my Outlook, see if that's come through yet. No, not quite just yet. So we'll give that a second to come through. Let me just come back to the home here. Now, what I haven't done yet is put this user into any groups. And for the purpose of the demo, I don't need to do that, but I do want to talk about that side as well. And probably now is a good time while I'm waiting for that email to come through. So just like users, I can search groups. I can see here, I've got a number of different groups available to me. I can open those up. I can see the owners of a group. So currently this doesn't have any owners, but anybody I make an owner is then able to edit the membership of the group. And I can see the different users that are available in this group. I can actually add a member to this. So I can say, let's look for that Peter account that I just added. Go ahead and search it. It's this one here. And I've now added that Peter Carson user to my group. Cool feature in the groups here, I'm not going to be showing today, but I'm going to be talking in next month's webinar, is this available for registration as well. The idea here is that you can actually set up a group drop down on your registration form and people can choose the group that they want to register for. Say, for example, in that board of directors scenario that we have not only the board of directors, but we've got half a dozen different working groups or committees as well. I could make each of those available for registration. People could choose what group they're registering for, and then whoever's an owner of that group gets an approval email. And I'll show you those emails in a minute from a pending approval and an approver perspective. So that's another interesting scenario in there too. Okay, I've got my email. Let's go ahead and open that up here. So remember the template that I was showing you before. This is showing me that same copy. It's all filled in now. It's got my name in there. It's got my email address in there. It's got my link here to set a password. Now I'm going to copy that because I actually want to put it into a separate incognito window here because I don't want to confuse with the session I'm already logged in with. And I go ahead and hit that link. So it's going to take me through and say, okay, set password is a bit of a misnomer. We need to do some text changes in there because I don't have to set a password. I can if I want to, but if I would prefer to, I could actually use my Google or my Facebook account to access this. So let's go ahead and say we want to do Facebook. I click on the Facebook link and log in. Now I haven't actually logged into Facebook in this browser session yet, so it's now bringing up the Facebook login. If I was already logged into Facebook in another browser tab, I wouldn't see this. It would just go right by for me. So I can use that same peter@envisionit.com email address, go ahead and log into my Facebook. Success, my account is now associated with Facebook, and I'm done. That's all I needed to do. I don't have to set a password. I don't have to ever reset a forgotten password because I don't have a password in the system. All of my logins are happening through that social identity. So let's start the process over and imagine I've come back to the site a little later here. I'm going to open up a new incognito window again and say I want to come to this Extranet user manager site. So when I hit the site, the first thing it's going to do is say, well, I don't know who you are. I need you to come to the login form and sign in for me. So this is our new sign-in form. Looks a little different than if anybody's seen our previous login forms that just had the email address and password on there. So we've got a number of possible ways to sign in. Full transparency, we've only connected up the Google and the Facebook so far, but we're quite confident the Twitter and the Microsoft should come in fairly easily as part of that as well. So I can still click the mail link there and see my traditional enter your email and password. But remember, I didn't do that when I accepted the welcome email. So if I click that again, hide it, and go ahead and click on the Facebook login here. Now, because I closed the browser, I lost my Facebook session. But again, if I was already logged into Facebook, I would be good to go from that point of view. Oh, this didn't remember my password. I've got a weird password in here. Bear with me a second. I should have done the Facebook login first. You get to see my feed that way. There we go. So it's actually gone past. It saw that I was logged in there, and I'm actually back in the portal now. So I never entered my password into Extranet User Manager. I only entered it into Facebook. And the easier scenario, actually, let me start that one over again, because it actually makes more sense if I go to Facebook first. So let me start a new incognito window. I'll come to Facebook. I'll do my login here. So I'm already in Facebook, and I decide I want to go to the Extranet User Manager portal. I click on my link here. I click Facebook. Boom, boom, boom. I'm in. It was dead simple. So if you've already got that identity already set up, away you go. You don't need to enter any credentials. It already knows who you are. Welcome, Peter Carson. It knows if I come back to my profile here, I can see all that same profile information that was entered when I was invited into the portal. I could update this profile information. It's up to you whether you want to allow invited users to be able to maintain their own profile, or whether you want to lock this down, that the profile is not actually available to them. It's entirely up to them from there. Okay, but the whole goal was to get me into Office 365. So what does that look like? Well, let's come back to the home here. And we see that we've got a link to Office 365 here. Now, if I go and control click on that, we'll open in a new tab here. We'll see it's redirecting through the Microsoft login. Again, because of single sign-on, it took me right through there. It already knew who I was. And it says, hey, I just want to bring up this stay signed in. And it continues, and I'm into my umdemo.sharepoint.com. So I know by that URL, I'm actually on Office 365. I'm not signed in as a full user. I'm actually not a licensed user right now. We do have the ability to add licenses to users, and I'm going to talk a bit more about the licensing scenarios as we go through here. And then whatever sites I have access to in SharePoint Online, I then have visibility through here. This is actually another segue into our next webinar that I want to talk about here, is all around site provisioning. So the site I've come to here, we've arbitrarily called it /site/landing. The idea is that this is a landing site for everybody to come to, and it will direct them into whatever sites they have access to. So we have a list here, and we can see, I have access to this demo sites. I can click on that link, and it takes me down into this modern communication site, which is a demo site that I have rights and access to. There may be a whole bunch of other Office 365 sites that I don't have access to that I don't know about. They're not showing in this list because SharePoint does a nice job of security trimming that down and only showing me the links for the sites that I have access to. So the February webinar, we're going to be focusing on that whole site provisioning process where you can actually have business owners request sites through a form, have them get provisioned automatically for them, and actually name the extranet groups that they want people to be able to use to come into those sites. And it'll wire up all those permissions for them. So once they've requested a site, they would just come back to the main landing admin that we started with here and just start adding users and putting them into the groups for the site that they wanted. And magically, those people get invited and they have access to the right sites. They end up at this page here, and it directs them into the right spot in Office 365. So if you're looking at something simple like a Dropbox and saying, well, how can we replicate that in Office 365? Wiring all this together really gives you that same simple kind of experience. And all the site provisioning stuff that I'm going to be talking about next month, we're actually already publishing it on GitHub, so we're making it available from an open source point of view. So you're free to use it with no additional costs as part of that. Obviously, to leverage the Extranet User Manager part of it, you need the product, but you could even use it without that from that point of view. So some cool new technology that we're releasing out from that perspective. So that was the first process, going through the invitation process side of things. Now, again, in interest of full transparency, I want to talk a little bit about licensing challenges and what does this mean. So I've logged into an Office 365 tenant coming in through the Extranet user manager. So from the Microsoft licensing agreement point of view, that doesn't count as an external user. So if I want to do this approach here, I have to actually purchase a license for those external users, which is a problem for most organizations. The OCAS case study that we're going to show you at the end of the webinar, that doesn't matter to them because they're a registered charity. They just go ask for more licenses. Microsoft will give them as many E1 licenses as they want, and away they go. And we have a number of registered charities who we work with from that point of view. The piece that we're still finishing off right now is to actually come in through Azure B2B. That allows you to not require a license. Requires a little bit of trickery. What we're going to do is you log into one Azure AD, but you don't actually go to the connected Office 365. You go to a different Office 365 through B2B. I need some pictures to better explain this. I'm still working on those to get that together. But rest assured, the idea is that you can control the login experience and you can end up in Office 365 and not require an additional subscription for those external users. Obviously, you need subscriptions for your staff. We're not trying to circumvent any of that licensing from that point of view. What we do want to do is ensure that the spirit is maintained, which is external users should be able to come in and collaborate with you in Office 365 without incurring additional subscriptions through there. So that's where we're going from that point of view. So let's take the second scenario that we talked about, which is to go through a self-registration process. So in this scenario, you don't necessarily know who all those external people are. You want them to be able to come to our registration form, fill that out, and actually choose that social identity right at time of registration as part of that. And we can actually extract some of the registration information right from Google or Facebook because they'll tell us things like the first and last name and the email address of the person. You fill out the rest of your registration information, submit it, and it goes through an approval workflow process. So let's come back to our main site here and back into our email configuration for a second. So we looked at the welcome email. We talked about the forgotten password. I mean, this is the one if you don't remember how to get in, it guides you back through from a self-service point of view. It's these two here that I want to talk about now, the pending approver and the pending approval. So the pending approval, this email is sent out to somebody that registers to say, hey, thanks for registering. You need to wait though. Somebody needs to approve your account. You'll get another email once you're all set from that point of view. And that other email is the welcome email that we've already seen. And then the pending approver goes to the group owner to say, hey, somebody just registered for your group. They want to have access to your site. You need to approve them. And here's a link to edit the record so you can see all their information and make a decision as to whether you want to activate them or not. So those are the two additional emails that we want to look at through that process. So let's come back to our incognito, close that out, and we're going to start a whole new fresh session here. So we're going to go through the same process. I'm going to start by going to the landing site, and it's going to bring up the login form just like we saw before. But in this case, imagine I don't have an account yet. So we have down here, not a member yet, create an account now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. So the first thing I have to do is decide, well, when I get my account, how do I want to sign in? Do I want to use my Google or Facebook, or do I want to keep using a password? So let's assume for this scenario, we've already done the Facebook scenario. I want to actually use my Google ID to access the website. So just like we saw before, I'm not signed into Google yet, so I have to enter my Google credentials. I've signed into Google now. It's back to the registration form, and it already knows what's my first name, what's my last name, and what's my Gmail address through here. I can enter any of the additional information. It's all optional, so I don't have to fill it in, and go ahead and register. So now those two emails that I was showing you in the configuration are on their way through. So one of them is going to me as the person that registered to my Gmail account, and the other one is going through to me as the owner of the group saying, hey, somebody new just came in that wants to register. I don't actually have to wait for that second email. I can come back to the portal here and say, well, let's just search users, type in my Peter, and we can see right away, oh, there's my Gmail account, pending approval. Let's go ahead and edit that record. Oh, actually the email just came through. So here's the one for the user to do their pending approval. If I click on that link, I'll end up at that same spot. editing that user's information. Whoops, we got an error in the URL there. Okay, so I can see what they entered on the registration form. I can update any of that as appropriate. I can add my own fields, or maybe fields that you want to keep in here just for internal purposes that people didn't see on the registration form. But the main thing I need to do is mark them as an active user. And I go ahead and update them. And this is now going to generate the welcome email. Now, the key difference here, though, is this user doesn't actually need that welcome email. I mean, it's a nice thing to have to let them know, so if they need to find the portal again later, they can find their way back in, and you can provide some background on what they should be doing there. Okay, so I'm back here now. Yeah, so all I need to do is mark this user as active, update them, which I've done. I was saying that they don't actually need the welcome email. It's a good reference. It's a nice introduction to the extranet. But because they're not setting a password, they can immediately come into the site. So let's come back here. Let's start that process over again of signing in. So let's imagine that I'm already signed into my Gmail. I see my new welcome email that just came through here, welcoming me into the portal. But I can actually go straight into the portal. I don't actually need that email. So here I've come to my login form. I say, well, I registered with Google, so I'm going to click on the Google link. I'm already logged into Google, so it immediately took me through. So very much like that Facebook experience, I don't need to put any credentials. It immediately knows, here's my Gmail account, that I'm signed in. I can come to my profile, and I can see all my profile information updated as appropriate through there. And then again, I can click on the Office 365 link. It'll redirect through. Goes through a couple different Microsoft pages, and then we end up at the Office 365. So I'm at the same Office 365 site. It's hard to see the difference because I don't see my my email address there, obviously, but if I drill down into my personal info, we can see there's my Gmail account that I'm signed in with. So I haven't directly signed into Office 365 with Google, but I've signed into the Extranet User Manager product with Google, and then that's provided my information to Office 365. So it's not like we've built direct integration at the Office 365 level, but we act as what's called the identity provider for Office 365 and allow you to sign in with your Google or your Facebook account through there. All right. So let's come back here for a minute. Let's talk about registration customization. So I want to do a quick demo on what's involved in actually customizing that registration form. So if we come back, let's start from a fresh incognito again. Sorry about all the sessions. I'm wearing kind of a whole lot of different personas as I go through these demos. If I come to the landing, say I want to create an account, and let's actually just use the password option because that's a simple one right now. So you'll see the registration form looks a little bit different because I actually have to enter in my password as I'm doing my registration. But we've got these fields here. And let's say for argument's sake that, I don't really care about address information, so I want to take those fields out. But I want to add in some net new fields as well. So the way the registration project is organized, I mentioned it's just HTML files. Let me find my editor here. Where did we go? Nope. There we go. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is the register.html. So this is the actual backend HTML content that's used for that registration form. If you're not familiar with editing HTML, don't worry too much. I'll try not to lose you through here, but basically this is defining all the different fields that we see on the form. So we can see here's our password fields right now. Here's things like our first name and our last name. If we keep going down, here's all the street, city, country information through here. So what I can do is I could actually take a bunch of these form fields and just remove them out completely because we say, you know what, I'm actually not interested in those fields. But let's say we want to put a new field in here. Let's call it webinar demo. Now we'll need to update a few things in here. So we have to name this appropriately. And I'm going to show you in a minute in the database how we wire this together. And there's a little bit of extra information that we need here, this data extra tab. I actually have a developer guide that takes you through this whole process. I'll go ahead and drop that in. We don't really want a 123 Main Street placeholder. We won't want to enter your street address. I'll just say enter your demo content because we want to be accessible friendly and always have alt text in there. Okay, so I can go ahead and save that. Now we need to copy this file up onto the actual server. So give me a second here and we will grab that file. Sorry, I meant to have this all staged up and then I forgot about it. Where are we? Presentations. Here we go. Okay, and I need to copy that onto the server itself. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll replace it. Sorry, I'm doing this on my second screen. All right, let's come back to our registration form and let's refresh that form to come back in through the password. And we now see that all those address fields have disappeared and I've got this new webinar demo field in there. Where you're going to say, well, how does it know where to store webinar demo? I mean, there's nothing in the database that knows what to do with that. So precisely, we need to actually go into the database and fix that up. So this is the actual Extranet User Manager database here. And one of the tables in here is called User Extra. And the idea is there's a couple of these. There's a role extra, there's a user role extra. These are intended for our customers to be able to extend the data model of the product. If there's new fields that you want to add in, you can actually come in through here, insert a new column. And we have to be careful. We need to make sure we name it exactly the same as the field name that we used in the form. I'll go ahead and save that. And now we've got a place for that to go. And that's basically all I need to do. I need to make sure I've created the field to record the data and put the field onto my form. Everything else magically happens in between from there. So what do I need to do now is actually go through that registration process again. Actually, it's easier if I do it just from a Google point of view. Let me just do that, because Google will fill all my information in for me. There we go. Put that content in there and go ahead and register that user. Oh, I didn't update my form properly. Problem with doing live demos. I missed something in here. Yep. The name is not street, the name is webinar demo. So let me go put that where it's supposed to be. We'll give it one more try. Replace. Sorry, I'm going to have to start this fresh here. I'll do my Google again. We'll call this demo 2. Go ahead and register. Boom, success. Now, if I come back to this form here, let's search that new user that I just put in there. So I'll put in my Peter. There's my pending approval user that I just created there. We didn't customize this form, so I'm not going to see that webinar demo field on here. I need to go through that same process to customize this one as well, because they're 2 independent forms. I'm not going to do that right now in the interest of time. What I am going to do, though, is come back to the database for a minute, and I have a little query here that I can run, and we can see right there is the last record that got entered in at 1:45, which is the time now, with that text demo 2 in there. So we can see that it's properly recorded that data into the database itself. So that's, a very quick look at it, but it gives you a sense of how easy it is to customize these forms. And if you remember back to what I was saying previously, these are all just snippets of HTML. So we've got different HTML for each of the forms. Right now, I'm putting those pages inside of the actual Extranet User Manager application. But if you wanted to, you could actually deploy those forms right into your core application itself. So maybe you had SharePoint on premises, you wanted to have a registration form right inside of SharePoint, you could actually put that HTML into your SharePoint page and have that registration work as well. So it's quite sophisticated in terms of how you can integrate that in with your applications as part of that. Okay, let's come back to our slides here. So I've taken you through how we add those registration fields into the table, how we add the new field to the HTML form, that it's just an HTML snippet. We can embed it into pages. As long as I name it properly, which I didn't do the first time, it will connect up to that database field, and away you go from there. So that's pretty straightforward. All right, the last section I want to talk about for today's webinar is actually give you a real world scenario of somebody that's doing this. So the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies, this is an umbrella organization over top of the various different children's aid societies that operate in the province of Ontario here in Canada. It's about 8,000 staff at those member societies, and they're all considered the Extranet users. Even though they're staff, they're not staff of OCAS itself. OCAS's mandate, though, is to provide training and education to those 8,000 staff that are working with kids across the province to making sure that they're effective at what they're doing, promoting the child welfare issues, influencing public commitment and opinion as part of that. So what we've done for them is built an Office 365 portal and used our Extranet user manager to bring those 8,000 people in. And the Umbrella Association doesn't even know who those people are. So they depended on a self-registration process as part of that. So I'll take you into that in a minute, but basically we've built the self-registration portal, and we've actually got some auto approvals in there, and I'll explain those rules when I bring up the form. It's all branded, so they've got the branding through all that. It's all hosted in the cloud, so OCAS doesn't need to run anything. We host the Extranet User Manager for them, and Microsoft hosts the Office 365. We've done some interesting things in the portal itself. I'm not going to have time today to dive into that, but around site navigation and search, making it really easy to find information. And I mentioned we're also doing that single sign-on to Desire to Learn. So if somebody signs into the 365 portal and it says, here's a link to a course that you should take, and that course is offered by Desire to Learn, boom, that opens in a new tab. They don't need to sign in again, does the single sign-on over to Desire to Learn, and away they go from there. Now, they haven't done the social integration. We're just launching that feature. Their site actually went live in June of 2015. So they're coming up on 3 years now that they've been running in Office 365. But we'll be having discussions to say, hey, does this make sense in this scenario? Social is not for everybody in all scenarios, but in a lot, it does make a lot of sense. So let's come back to our incognito, close that out yet again. We'll start up a fresh one. And let's actually bring up their site. So I'm going to go to ocas.sharepoint.com. Again, sharepoint.com lets me know, hey, I'm hitting Office 365. Office 365 says, I don't know who you are, so I'm actually going to redirect you over to the Extranet User Manager login, and this is our traditional login that just has the email and password on it. So if I already have an account, I can go ahead and sign in. If I've forgotten my password, I can use that to reset my password. But the key thing we want to do here is go on to the registration link. So you can see here we've customized the registration form. It's got their branding in it. It's got different fields in here that's important to them as an organization. So the key thing is, what organization do you actually work for? So if I say, well, I work for the Children's Aid Society of Toronto, it already knows the address information for that organization. I pick my role within that. I enter in my information. And as long as I enter an email address that matches the email domain for Children's Aid Society of Toronto, because that's what I've chosen, it's actually going to auto-approve my account. So as long as that's consistent, it's good to go from there. Because we know that if you have a valid email from CAST, from Children's Aid Society of Toronto, and you can receive our email, that proves that you work for Children's Aid Society of Toronto. We don't need to go any further than that. So we can auto-approve you. If you say, oh, excuse me, well, I don't actually belong to one of the societies, I'm going to put in other, fill in my information, it is going to go through that approval process that we saw in our self-registration example. So we can get quite flexible and quite sophisticated in terms of how this process works. So that's about it. Let me just come back to my slide deck here. I'm a little before the top of the hour, but I figured giving time back to people is never a bad thing. I just want to let people know about some of the things that we've got coming up. We've actually got a pretty busy winter and spring planned out for us. I'm actually going to be speaking at the Toronto SharePoint Users Group meeting tomorrow night. That's actually going to be on the site provisioning, which is actually going to be our topic for our February webinar as well. I'm going to be delivering that topic at Spark Rock, which is a local conference happening here in Toronto, mid-February as well. And then March, I'm down in DC. I'm actually giving a number of talks on the site provisioning, on the social login, extranets in general, as well as an all-up kind of wrap all those topics together, full-day workshop as part of the pre-conference through there. And then we're going to be exhibiting down at the SharePoint Conference North America in Las Vegas in May. So lots of things coming. If you're going to any of those events, don't be shy. Come up and say hi, and love to chat more about things from there. So from there, I'm going to have a quick look at the questions. I'm not sure if we had any that we didn't answer as we were going through there. And if not from that point of view, Amanda, I don't know if there's anything you want to draw out to my attention there. Okay. Well, with that, I will give everybody 10 minutes back, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.